this is really one of the biggest government U-turns on a global stage that we've really seen in modern history. I would say that it's sort of quite spectacularly embarrassing for Donald Trump, and I would say quite damaging for the kind of credibility of his threats going forward. But really, if we listen to what he said at the White House yesterday after the announcement, it's clear that the decision wasn't really based on the official reasoning, which was that dozens of countries were suddenly coming to him to negotiate, but actually more due to the market reaction, and actually primarily due to the rapid deterioration in US treasuries and US bond markets, which really, if it continued in the way that it was yesterday, could have actually compromised US financial institutions and really led to market and systemic failure, which would have been economically devastating. But I would say that, primarily the market reaction that we've seen is not really due to the reduction or the temporary reduction in tariffs that we've seen over the next 90 days, but really due to what the U-turn really represents, and that is the fact that markets have demonstrated an ability to constrain Donald Trump, and really where we've seen an absence of the ability of US democracy to place any kind of constraints on Donald Trump's behavior. Actually, we have seen some recognition by officials or people in the Trump administration of certain realities that mean that the US cannot pursue this kind of reckless or dramatic trade policy that many people consider to be quite sort of suicidal economically. So I'd say that, of course, we have seen quite a sharp rise in the market since then, but actually really looking forward, there's still a huge amount of uncertainty in the market, particularly as you mentioned, there's still the tariffs on China, which seem to be escalating every day. We have the fact that we still have 10% tariffs across the board, and we have higher tariffs on areas like car imports and steel imports into America. But primarily, the issue is for global economies and the American economies is actually going to be uncertainty, because 90 days may seem like a long time compared to what we've seen over the last week, but actually when you're trying to negotiate with dozens of countries on trade, actually 90 days is very short, because typically it takes years or sometimes even decades for countries to negotiate on trade. So I would say that even though this is some relief, actually there's still a very significant threat to the US and global economy.
And do you see this as impacting businesses long term as well?
I mean, I certainly would. Obviously, it depends on where those businesses are located. And of course, Donald Trump, one of his reasonings that he's given for the tariffs is trying to repatriate some businesses back into the United States, particularly on manufacturing. But actually, given the fact that America has behaved quite erratically on tariffs and really put them on and off in such, kind of flippant ways, means that I actually think that a lot of businesses will be deterred from investing in the United States, because ultimately America under Trump is not proving to be a reliable business environment. Obviously, businesses need certainty about the costs they're going to face and how they're going to be able to import and export. And the reality is that they're not getting that. And of course, Donald Trump has been bragging over the past few days about the fact that not only companies but governments have been coming to him and begging him for tariff reprieves and exemptions. I think that really cuts to the heart of actually what these tariffs are really about. And they're not necessarily about Trump trying to rebalance trade or get rid of trade deficits, but actually because of the massive personal opportunities that it creates for Donald Trump, because you have loads of companies and governments basically begging the United States president to do anything to reduce the tariffs. So I think still, companies are going to be quite worried about what they see, and ultimately we're going to see a reduction in investment, not just in the United States, but globally, which we know if lasts for long enough actually leads to countries slipping into recession.